when I think back to public housing, especially in my younger days, I always think the grass was green. You know, a lot of people playing, never having a want for anything. Um, a sense of community, a sense of collectiveness. You know, always people working together. Um, there was always a lot of what we call in-house things being done, like working in the community. Most of the people who worked in public housing in the community were from public housing. So your neighbors was a janitor, your neighbor was security, you know, your neighbor was the landscaper, your neighbor was the plumber. You know, it was a sense of community, always a sense of community, being connected. So there was a feeling of connectivity to people around me.
I remember coming home from 4-H camp, Camp Shawa Nancy, and I always would love going to camp because it would be so diverse with all these groups of different people, and just having the time of my life. And on the day back from Camp Shawa Nancy, I remember so vividly that it was a group of men gambling in front of the building, and they got into an argument. One of the guys pulled out a knife, and someone passed the other guy who was going to be the victim a handgun, and he shot him right in front of me. And he proceeded to run up the stairs. And the guy who shot, it was really self-defense, but that guy was my sister's boyfriend who she had a baby by. So his first reaction, he ran up to our house, and my mother put him out. Like, no, you can't come here. But I just remember we had no type of counseling intervention. You saw a dead body drop, and they expected you to recover from it right away. And that was the beginning of, I would say, the mental stages you go through as growing up in public housing, because you've seen so much. And the process of seeing dead bodies, you kind of get numb to the situation of death.
The first time I became immune to, I wouldn't say immune, but I became aware to this is the life that was happening around me. I was about 12 years old, and we had probably been staying in 5201 for about 2 months, and it was the summertime. And I remember walking past this building called 5247. You know, I didn't know too many people over there, but I was walking towards the basketball court, what was in front of there, and it seemed like someone had threw something out the window from like the 8th floor, so I moved out the way, and I jumped out the way, and I remember the woman started hollering, "That's my baby. It's my baby." And I thought somebody trying to throw something at me, but it was a little boy. His name was Jordan, I believe, something like that. But anyway, the baby fell out the window trying to reach for his mom because she was outside sitting on the bench. And he died, and I just remember standing there, and the little boy bleeding out his mouth, and I'm 12 years old. And that's the first time I ever witnessed something traumatic of that nature. But then it became more and more regular, where you'll walk out and you'll see somebody on the elevator dead, shot up, or something like that, or they'll go to war. I remember back in 1992, that's probably some of my last years being over there. It was a war between a drug war, and that was between the BDs and the GDs, the Black Gangster Disciples and the Gangster Disciples. And it was a city war where over 300 people got shot, and a lot of them got killed that year. You know, you can check the statistics. That's what happened. And it was a bloodbath. So you had people coming from all over the city from different gangs, and they'll make a rest haven in the projects. So it was not the people who lived in the projects who was doing this. It was people from other places who went up under the shelter of the gangs to commit these crimes in the projects. So the regular people who lived in the project was basically under hostage, in a sense.
What was that like to live in that environment? Was it like a war?
Well, all I can say is, what was it like to live in that environment? It was a scary feeling. But by me being a young man, it was exciting as well. And I'll be lying if I tell you it wasn't exciting. I'm 14, 15 years old with an AK-47, you know, like I'm seeing in the movies, or with a 357 Magnum and a 9, even though we finna kill each other. I don't know, my mind could not adjust at the age of 15 that I'm finna kill somebody or somebody's finna kill me. It's like a war game in a sense, but it was real.
A guy that I knew who was like a older guy who always mentored us and talked to us, and he was like a know-it-all guy. He got around out of it. He went north and everywhere else, so he knew things and knew people. He said, man, let me tell you something. He said, there's going to be something that's going to hit the streets that's going to change lives in this community forever. He said, and the people over here are not ready for it, and they can't afford it. And he took me to his house, and he lit a match, and he held a little piece of, looked like crystal up, and he laid it on a spoon, and he put a little water on it or something. I don't know if it was water at this point or not, but it was something liquid, and he held the mat underneath it and kept lighting the match until it began to kind of sizzle a little. And then he shook it around, and it dried. And it came from being that rock form to being like a powdery substance. And he said he put it in a little screener, and it was a little pipe-like thing. And he said, you got to do exactly what I tell you. He said, do, and don't do anything else. And he put it up, lit it, and put it up to my mouth, and I said, and he said, that's it. And he took it back, and he said, what do you feel? And that was this crazy, like, live rush going through my head. And it was kind of frightening because all of a sudden my energy level, everything was like, I was like, wow. You know, and my eyes got big, and he was like, that's what I'm saying. He said, and you make that's the last time that you ever let anyone give you this, sell you this, or you touch it. And that was my introduction to what would be coming. And sure enough, like 1986, it hit the streets in Ida B. Wells, and it changed everything. Mothers were willing to rent out their apartments for the money to have them to use it and sell it out of their houses. People were beginning to just be careless about the way that they lived, selling their food stamps. It was sad. and you know, being privy to the information that was coming, it was like another thing like, oh man, how could this be? And he came around because he didn't stay in the neighborhood, and he said, remember I told you about this? He said, you see it now, don't you? I said, man, you were absolutely right. And from that point on, it was like the development never was the same.
Couldn't have went in and out of those buildings if it weren't for the good people in the community, you know, and that kept a certain amount of criminal activity at bay. The crooks could do so much, but there was a certain line they couldn't cross, you know. And I remember this lady one time, two ladies were going to go shopping. They walked over to the mailbox to check the mail before they left. And shots rang out. A dope dealer and another guy got in an argument. And this woman got hit in the neck. And fell right in front of our window just about, you know, when I had the program down in Stateway. And so they took her to the hospital. She was fighting for her life. And so I went out, you know, walking around through the building, through the area, and asking, you know, just what was up. And the consensus of the people in the area, in the neighborhood, was, we'll see how she does. If she makes it, then it's going to be up to her, you know, whether to tell who did it. You know, if she doesn't make it, it's going to be up to us. And we're going to bring the guy in if she dies, you know.
What happened?
She died, and they brought the guy in. And he came running in, you know, because he stepped over the line.
You know, hit the streets like at 11 o'clock at night, and we would have like 3 jobs. Soon as we hit the streets, man shot, man stabbed, burglary in progress, 10-1. And we trying, which one do we go to first? Man shot, man stabbed, running up 14 flights of steps, running up 15 flights of steps. Elevators out.
Okay, we lived in 1150. My aunt lived in 1117, which is directly behind it. My other aunt lived on Larrabee. That was 3 different gang territories. So as an 8-year-old kid, I didn't have much to worry about, or most what people would think. But when you have to walk and cross that territory, it becomes a whole different atmosphere. I can remember times where we didn't go to school because the shooting was just that thick. Or somebody got shot or killed the night before, and the gangs in the building didn't want to let my mom or a lot of us out of the building of fear that bullets would come through.
One day, some people was getting beat by the door, and you could hear them and what they're saying, so it's drug-related somehow. Something went wrong. But it's some youth. Later, we discovered it's the youth when I dragged them in. But they were beating this young man so bad at the door that the door was like thumping, boom, 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 boom. And it was violent, you know, and these are metal doors. This wasn't a wooden front door, this was a metal door. So it's like booming, ramming, and you could tell that they must be stomping them with their feet, because you could hear them like on the floor, because you could hear the scurrying sound up against the wall, and you could hear all of that. It was real loud, and it was just one big sound of boom that changed my fear turned to anger. It just happened. It just instantly turned from fear and scared to anger. It was so loud and like, bam, I just knew it was about to come open. And I said, no, you don't. And I ran to the door and I opened it, not knowing what I'm gonna do because now I'm angry. And I just, on instinct, opened it, and not knowing what I'm gonna say, he fell in my arms. They had just hit him again when I was opening the door and he fell. So when he fell, I had caught him like this. So I'm pulling at him like this with this shoulder to try to pull him in. So they had leaned forward, because when they went like this and I opened the door, they leaned forward. So I'm dragging them in and I'm like, no. So they stunned and they just stopped because they like shocked. And I dragged them in and I was just about to shut the door. My mama, no, they got him, another boy by the window. I'm going to get him, and she ran past me. So they stunned, they just standing there. So she went and got him, and they let her bring him back in with no problems or nothing. And so we crying, and they crying, the boys, and you could see their faces almost undescribable, like unrecognizable, I'll say, because they're so swollen and so bumpy, you know, to where you could see in the blood. So, yeah, so sometimes these are things that go on that don't make the news, because you never know what goes on at any given time. Like I'm saying, you could come out the house and you dodging a bullet that quick. You see what I'm saying? And you wonder, how can the management and the police allow you and your kids, right? And you are law-abiding citizens and a tenant, trying to live there, mind your own business, but you in harm's way.